What's this? Well, it's a gift, of course. I mean, you can tell by the bow on it and the beautiful way it's presented, but we don't know what it is. I mean, we don't know what's inside of it, and if we did, it wouldn't be the same, because this gift is about not knowing. These bars of soap are just bars of soap, but if you dress them up right, they're gifts. Because a gift is about the experience of the gift, not about the thing. When we receive a gift, we receive a moment of generosity, a moment of being seen, a moment of recognition that the relationship between me and you has real value. For the last 15 years in my work as a writer and an artist and the director of the performance group Odyssey Works, I've been fascinated with this notion. Gifts are not things. What else functions this way? What else is primarily the facilitator of an experience rather than an object? If this isn't a thing, what is it? It's fun, or maybe terror, or some clever way for me to hide my own abounding loneliness, or this is fear of hives, or maybe it's a mnemonic reminder of a childhood favorite comic strip, or this is sublime entrance of beauty into the gritty mundane, or the latest way that your kid is trying to kill himself. The point is that after all these years, I no longer believe in things. I mean, I know they exist, but I don't have much faith in them. Things want you to believe that they're the whole point of the design process, but I'd like to convert you to my thought system. Because once we get past the thing in the design process, we can begin to make what we have in fact been making all along, which is experiences. In 2001, I took a long walk on the beautiful cliffs of Big Sur in California with my friend Matthew Perdon. Matthew was a painter and a theater director, and I was a poet and an architect, and Odyssey Works was born. And Odyssey Works creates performances for one-person audiences. They can be a day-long, week-long, even months-long. And when we were making this, we were thinking that this could be a project wherein we weren't focused on things anymore, and we could really put our attention into making art that blew people's minds. We no longer had to worry about the difference between poetry and prose, between architecture and theory, between graphic design and film. All we needed was an intimate and deeply empathetic understanding of our audience. We started by picking an audience member and studying them intensely. We read all the books they read. We got to know the music they loved. We became friends with their friends and family, even their enemies. And when we knew them well enough, we gathered artists together in many different disciplines. We asked them to put aside their territoriality and to collaborate in the creation of complete experiences. What resulted was this, and this, and this. We took them on adventures. We composed strange pieces of music for them. We wrote books that spoke directly to them. We buried them alive. We wrapped them in cocoons. We sent them off on pilgrimages, and the results were transformative. After their performances, our participants, that's what we call them, they changed their lives. They left marriages, they left jobs, they started new careers, they moved. Usually, they did many of these things. Take Dare, for instance. Dare is a Native American and a lover of art. Dare could sit in front of a painting for 45 minutes, just taking it in. Here, she's in the middle of the performance Odyssey Works made for her in 2014. She's about to be unblindfolded and released into a museum tour already in progress. Everything seems normal. The tour guide, the people on the tour, the museum. The first piece they look at is this. It's a bust by Native American artist Judith Ululak. They spend 5 minutes there. Next piece is this one, 7 Yorkshire Landscapes by David Hockney. Here they spend 15 minutes. It's a little meditative. People join the group, and Dare is beginning to realize that we've redesigned the museum to invite people into her way of seeing. The final piece is this one, Anti-Mass by Cornelia Parker. A lot of people have joined the group now. We're some 50-odd souls. The room is almost full. We spend 45 minutes there just taking it in. This is what should happen in a museum, but it never does. It was so strange, in fact, that the museum guards didn't know what to make of us. One was overheard asking, "What are they doing?" And the other one said, "Looking at the art, I think." It was a small change, just slowing down our viewing, but it was transformative. After this, Dare changed almost everything in her life. We think of a museum as a building containing objects, as a collection of things. But I'd like to suggest that on that day in 2014, the DeYoung Museum in San Francisco was no longer a thing, but a very specific experience that we had designed. Abstract enough yet? No? Okay, then how about this question? What does a story look like? How much does it weigh? It seems absurd, but it's not really. I mean, we know that a story is bigger than the things that contain the story. And if we know this about stories, why do we stop there? Why, for instance, do we think of a home simply as a house? This is what happens when you design a house to be a home based on windows and doors. I mean, look at these kids. Have you ever seen kids play so neatly on such a clean, white floor? And here's a house that I've recently designed in upstate New York. This is where what I'm talking about moves from semantics to real practice. The Dwell magazine house looks great in pictures because it's designed to look great in pictures. But if you think of a house, of a home, as a site for living, as a constellation of design choices chosen to facilitate life, then what you end up with are these two lovely young ladies laughing and spinning. And what more do you want from a home, really, anyway? So when I was in architecture school, I loved the architecture of IMP, especially this one, which is the Johnson Museum of Art in Ithaca, New York. And it happened that my architecture professor, Sophia Grisdes, had worked in Pei's office. And she told a story about that time when they were working on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. And she said that Pei gathered the junior architects around, and he said something like, "I see a darkness leading to a light, followed by a sense of enclosure." It was cryptic, I know, but this is why his work was so great. He was thinking about architecture as we think about a gift, as a collection of possible experiences that are activated when a person engages with it. The gift, then, is the key to this thingless way of working. When you get your mother a gift, you don't think, "Oh, what object does she need?" But how do I want that moment to happen? Do I want her to feel surprise? And perhaps I should wrap it or hide it. Or do I want her to feel known? Maybe I should find her that very thing that she loves, maybe that out-of-print ABBA record in the original Swedish. Any experience can function like a gift. All we need to do is abandon the fetish of the thing, and we can be free to find the object that best suits our aims. How far can we take this? Odyssey Works' 2013 performance began with a book, and in this performance, we wanted to see how much more deeply the experience of story could be had if we could liberate it from the confines of the book. This children's book was written for our participant, Rick Moody, the author, to give to his 5-year-old daughter. The family priest handed it to him, and he read it to her. It followed a young girl as she drew a chalk door on the sidewalk and stepped in. And when she did, she was in her own magic secret room. Inside, there was a picture of a prairie to look at. There was music to listen to, books to read. It was a success. It went into regular bedtime circulation. And after Rick had largely committed it to memory, as parents do, we sent him to an address in downtown Brooklyn. This place, Rick's secret room. In it was that same picture of a prairie. And there was music for him to listen to, and there was a book for him to read. It was this book, this journal, which followed the adventures of a man who'd heard an incredible piece of music played on the cello by a woman in an apartment window, and it followed him on his search to find that woman again. Every week, Rick went back to his secret room, and every week the story in the journal had been developed just a little further. And then before his final trip to his secret room, Rick's friend Randy sent him a link to a book review at nytimesbooks.com. This one. And as he read it, he realized this was the review of the book he'd been reading. Had we just been hand copying some book that had just come out, or had we somehow hacked the New York Times? The mystery grew. And then after his final visit to the secret room, I ran into him on the street, and we went for a walk, and we talked about music, powerful experiences of music that we'd had in our lives. And we rounded a corner, a car pulled up, we got in and continued our conversation, totally engrossed. And then we ended up at LaGuardia Airport, and I opened the trunk, and I pulled out his suitcase, and I pulled out his passport, and he stuck it in the machine, and I said, yeah, you're on your way to Regina, Saskatchewan. He was on his way, on a journey. He left. It was the same journey, of course, that the journalist in the journal had gone on. It was a parallel journey, and he, of course, was also searching for the cellist. On the second leg of his journey, a man walking down the aisle handed him a piece of paper and said, I think you dropped this. It was this strange and illegible score, and the mystery built. And then he arrived in Regina, and he spent the night in a cheap motel there. Regina is a city bounded by prairie. It's clearly that same prairie. In the story already, this story has moved from children's book to installation, to notebook, to online citation, from absurdity to extremity, and in and out of the tempos of performance and travel. Was that interrogation by Canadian border security part of it? Was that strange feedback form from the Days Inn part of it? I especially like this part. It says, did you find that despite the generic nature of the hotel, it had a certain accidental charm? And Rick just wrote, no. So in the morning, he was driven out of town, and as the city faded beneath the horizon, the prairie came up to meet them, and the truck stopped, and Rick got out, and there's the field, and off in the field was this construction, and he knew he had arrived, and so he walked towards it, towards this room which of course was the final secret room. And then he started to hear the music, and then he saw her. He was in the prairie, in that prairie from all the pictures. And he was in another secret room, and this secret room was beautiful, not just because of the power of this moment, not just because of the beauty of the music, but because of all the threads of narrative that had woven together to make this moment possible. Later, when we asked him about the experience, Rick said to us, I'll always have Canada. So, what does the story look like? It looks like all these things. But it also looks like this. This is the diagram of the story as it moves from form to form to form, as it covers each line here a different modality, the journey, the text, the music, the live performance, each moving like a shapeshifter towards the climax in Canada. Now, if you still stubbornly believe in things, there are a heck of a lot of different projects here. But if you think of a story as a single experience, one that moves through different modalities, there's only one, and it's played out in the consciousness of its recipient. The old mode of object-obsessed specialization has got to go. The design of the future is experiential, and that's a great thing. That means that designers must think not only of how the app moves from one page to the next, noting pain points and how hard it is to hit the pay button, but what it's like ordering bananas on a handheld device, and what that does to your sense of nourishment and to your understanding of the farmers who created that banana. Likewise, architects must think not only of the doors and the windows, but about who might stand in that bedroom wearing that bathrobe, looking out that window at that lake, and wonder how to put her life back on the right path again. They must think about this and the lives of the people who built the building, and how the air in the neighborhood is choked by the fumes from that furnace, and how putting that building there affects all the rhythms of life around it. Odyssey Works' 2012 piece was for Laura. Laura's from Argentina, and Laura loved the stories of Jorge Luis Borges with their strange, intelligent, and powerfully complex plots. And so she was really excited when her partner handed her this book. It was written by an Argentine and resolutely Borgesian, and the stories in it really related to her life. She felt connected to them. They talked about story, and they talked about sound and the relationship between them. And she read it with interest and then put it down, and when she picked it up again, it looked like this. Half the paragraphs were gone. Only the paragraphs relating to sound and music remained. She kept reading it, then put it down, had to go. When she came back again, it looked like this. Only the sound words remained. In the story, all stories eventually deteriorate into sound. The story was, in fact, so powerful that it burst out of the confines of the book, and the book itself had begun to deteriorate. The story had broken from the object and become what it always had been, an experience. And this is the point. When you move past objects in the design process, all that's left are the experiences of the people involved. This means that anything we design, from a teapot to an organizational structure to a performance for an audience of one, is always relational, always interpersonal. Designs affect people. And in this, design is a fundamentally ethical project. For what is ethics, if not the question about how we affect one another? Does your project make the world more or less fair? Does it increase or decrease suffering? Does it encourage greed or generosity? These are questions that tend to fall outside of the design process. But if we're to make work that really matters, they're essential. Just asking them has an effect. The question itself is, you might say, a gift. Thank you.